Dr. Ellen, thanks for being on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So today we're talking about aging and ageism and the difference of the two, and just wanted to have a conversation with you about your wisdom and your work as a psychologist, as an author, and as a woman who is in her midlife. So I'm glad that you're here.
It's going to be a good conversation. Important topic.
Yes, it is. I know, it's one of the topics that have been around for so long. How do we age gracefully? And, and now, of course, the ageism is a very hot topic in all kinds of industries, in the workforce and just in everyday life. I just want to say, full disclosure for those people who are listening and won't watch this video, you're welcome to watch it on YouTube, a week after it airs. But, we're two middle-aged women, white, that are very privileged, and our perspective, hopefully with our kind of background and our work, is inclusive, but also it's our perspective. So I just want to say that to the listeners, because it could easily be stereotyped, the elephant in the room of, oh, there's two white middle-aged women talking.
But it's an important ism to talk about, because I think we're talking about so many isms, but ageism is one of the things that I think it is a bit of an elephant in the room as well, that we don't talk that much about it. And certainly, in the media, there is this sense that being of a certain age isn't okay. We certainly see it, with actresses, with reporters, where when you get to be a certain age, it's kind of like there aren't those juicy roles. And that's been, Gina Davis is studying that. It's really been shown that we kind of, have a timestamp on how beautiful we can be or how productive we can be. And that's absolutely not true, which is why I'm excited to talk about aging, well, and, that aging can be a super positive, exciting experience.
Yeah, it can. I see more and more in the media roles and, older people. Maybe I'm just more aware of it as I come into my older years, but I do see more and more of it. Not that it's equal, of course, and not that there's as many. But one thing I want to note before we get into the conversation, this is a conversation for men and women. It's not just about women. And I know that there's a lot of pressure on women to look a certain way and what beauty actually means, but men feel this too. And it's their sense of their worth and their self and their attractiveness and their power. Of course, we have fed the culture of men aging differently and easier in many ways, but this podcast is for both men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with men, it's a little different. I think with men and aging, men get a lot of their sense of self-worth from their work. And women actually get more of their sense of self, but we've been taught that it's about our looks. So it's a little different, but we're both feeling it in different ways. And there's overlap as well.
Yeah. So one question that came to mind early this morning when I was thinking about the podcast is, there are these trite sayings, these cliches, like, you get better, just like a fine wine, you get better with age, or with age comes wisdom. And the truth is, we like to say those and hold on to those things, but I don't believe that they're true, because it doesn't just happen to everyone. We have to actually work at aging well. We have to work at our consciousness and our awareness, and most of all, our acceptance of what's going on in our own bodies and our minds, and using that consciousness to have a greater perspective and a perception of life than we didn't have before. We see a lot of people aging, and they're not aging well, and they're not aging gracefully, and they're not wiser just because they're older. They're struggling, they're battling, they're in conflict with who they are. And so I want to talk a little bit about that kind of, opening up and breaking down this cliche of, well, now that you're old, you can be wise. And it just doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, it takes work. And I think it's really about transformation. It's about accepting where you are right now and determining who you are on the deepest level, being authentic, what makes you tick, and then working on yourself, learning new things. I mean, the people I think who are aging graceful, I'm really lucky. I have both my parents are in their 90s and they walk every day. They eat a whole food, plant-based diet. My mother reads like a book a day. My dad is, constantly learning, growing. But I think that you do have to work at it. It doesn't just happen automatically. quickly. It's not like, Cabernet Sauvignon, where you put it in the bottle, you put the cork on it, and you open it up a couple of years later and it tastes better. And I love that you brought that up, because we have to work on it, but I think we can grow into who we want to be. We can get to know ourselves, but a key piece of it too is keeping our bodies healthy, because our bodies and our minds are connected. And if we are eating the standard American diet, there's no way that we're going to be able to age gracefully. And also our brains aren't going to, support the kind of transformation and wisdom and growth that we want.
Yeah. So let's kind of break this conversation down into some groups, because there's a lot of different factors about aging and ageism, but let's talk about just aging. I'll be 50 in June, so I'm entering into the 50 plus crowd. I don't know how I really feel about it, because I don't feel like I attach some kind of fear to it or some kind of excitement to it. It's just, it's a new period in my life. And but it's certainly, you start checking the different boxes when you answer those questions at the DMV or at the, at the healthcare form or whatever. So that kind of brings the awareness to it. But just physically, you already mentioned, taking care of your body. But when we talk about aging for both women and men, first of all, let's just tackle the conversation about our physical appearance, our looks. It's a huge industry. People trying to look younger, anti-aging this, anti-aging that, this kind of standard of what beauty is. And how do you work with your clients or in your work about, helping a person uncover that stress or, reduce that stress and pressure to have to try to look 10 or 20 years younger?
Well, what I do is self-compassion, and it might sound kind of strange, but that really is the basis of my research on self-compassion. Show that treating yourself like a good friend. So being kind, being mindful when you're stressed, when you're struggling, understanding that everybody ages. It's a normal part, right, of the human experience. When the Buddha looked over that wall, he saw somebody who was aging, dying, having disease, struggling. And so understanding that this is a normal part of the human experience. And then being mindful, giving yourself what you need, being kind to yourself. My research really showed that practicing self-compassion actually improves body image. So body shame goes down, body dissatisfaction goes down, self-worth on appearance goes down, and our body appreciation goes up. So what I do is I, help work with people and teach them how to practice self-compassion, help them understand that the media shows us these idealized images, whether that is young, whether that is thin, because they want us to feel bad about ourselves. So we'll buy products and services. If we felt great about ourselves, we wouldn't lean into so much of the consumerism. We would feel good and we would explore other things that really bring us a sense of purpose and meaning. So I help them find more purpose and meaning. We practice self-compassion. And then I also help them work on their looks as well. So I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. I've been a dietitian for almost 30 years. So we work on diet, we work on movement, so that people can feel better. I also sometimes bring in a stylist. I think as you get older, sometimes your style changes. A lot of my clients have allowed their natural hair color to come in, which changes the way that you look. So I do everything that I can to help them feel good on the inside, and also, work on the outside as well, so that they can feel confident and good about themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really important. All of that is really important. And it's a lot for a person to do, especially if they've lived their life beating themselves up, self-sabotaging, listening to the voices of the inner critic, or have experienced a lot of ridicule or shaming or bullying in their life. Obviously the media is a big proponent of so many toxic things in our lives. But even if we didn't have the media, I think we perpetuate, especially like women, we kind of keep trying to one up each other, or, who are we dressing for? Who are we trying to make ourselves look like? What are we trying to say, or how are we trying to impress? And there's a real kind of nasty culture of this. I don't want to call it fake, but it sort of is, it's definitely not authentic. It's just trying to, impress, and get validation from other people, when how much of that is really necessary. I always talk in my work about learning how to validate ourselves, learning how to grow comfortable in our authenticity. And as you said, the compassion. And I kind of wrap all that around under acceptance, acceptance of who I am. But it's easy just to say these things, but to actually do them is a lot harder for people who have, been years and struggling with their own sense of self.
Yeah, that's what my first step in my book, Rock Your Midlife, is authenticity, is drilling down and figuring out who you are, being the youest you, like the quote Dr. Seuss. I think if we all drilled down and saw the beauty that we had, the talents, our genius, understanding our gifts, what we're awesome at, also what our weaknesses are, what we're not so great at, we wouldn't be doing as much of the comparison. Social comparison is an interesting thing because we evolved as humans to compare ourselves to others when we were in little tribes of like 30 to 50 people. So, if you were the best basket weaver, the best hunter, the best cook, the fire builder, you were the best at that thing. And it was important to define your niche, but now it doesn't serve us anymore. So I think, again, that level of becoming aware of, am I comparing myself to other people, or am I needing those likes on Instagram to feel good about myself? Observing that and then drilling down and saying, what just makes me feel good about me, and really becoming your own best friend, because ultimately what truly matters is that you love you. If you love you don't care so much about what other people think, then you're going to actually really glow and ironically be an inspiration for other people to be their best selves.
Right. Yeah. I try, especially when I do my clients or, on social media, I really try to. Last night, for example, I had on this really cozy, bushy sweater and I had my hair up in a ponytail and I didn't have any makeup on. And I try to break through some of those barriers one person at a time so that people become more comfortable and that I become more comfortable just being myself without trying to look a certain way. You mentioned a really important word, comparison, and I'm going to bring that into the conversation about competition as well. When you mention like Instagram and social media, and all of us are vying for attention, vying for likes, trying to boost our image, boost our posts, get more followers. I mean, it's really an insidious problem, I feel like. But the competition, I used to be super competitive. I am still in sports, but I think I just have like, a competitive nature. And I'm sure it comes from my early wounding patterns of, wanting to be seen or wanting to be first. But that competitiveness is so fascinating when we break that down of, what are we really trying to achieve here? There was the town I recently moved from, Jersey City, which is right by Manhattan. And I know a lot of cities and towns do this. They do the best of, there's different people who do like, choose your best florist, acupuncturist, restaurant, and so these competitions, they pin each other against the other, all these small businesses and business owners. And it's so appalling to me now. I don't know, it's my spiritual perspective or just, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. It was like, why do we want to just highlight one and have these businesses compete? Are we saying the others aren't valuable enough? Are we just trying to drive all the traffic to one organization? What's the value of that? Aren't we a community, and shouldn't we want to lift everyone up equally? So what is your idea about competition? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Sports in schools, these best of competitions around towns. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that we should be working to lift everybody up. And the problem with the, competition is there has to be somebody at the bottom end, and what's happening with that person. And then just going back to the topic of self-compassion, and versus self-esteem. Self-esteem is very wobbly, right? So you can win that award one day, you can go out and feel that you're looking really awesome. And then, another day you have a bad hair day and you're not feeling so good. It's this constant competition against ourselves. What we have in our mind is our best self, as well as other people. It's very wobbly. When you feel good, you feel good. And when you don't, you don't. Versus the self-compassion piece is really, it's very stable and it builds. You don't, you keep liking yourself, supporting yourself, being there for yourself more and more. And I think we need to have more of that compassionate, kind attitude towards others, that we're all in this together, particularly, where we're at with the planet right now, that we all need to be working regardless of age, ethnicity, race, that we need to all be supporting each other and lifting each other up. Because I agree with you. It's an issue, but there is something to be said for a little bit of healthy competition.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we sort of work as a team? so
Mhm.
that people are feeling motivated to be their best selves, but at the same time, they're supporting everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, that feeling of, I want to win, that power surge that we get. And like you said, whether it's I want to win today and look great and show my boss what I'm made of, or I want to win the best of, or I want to win 100,000, views on this. It's really, a deeply ingrained issue. I think that a lot of people struggle with. I love when I see a person who is so authentic and so unconcerned with any of that. It's just a breath of fresh air, and that's where I strive to become that more and more. um, and the value that a person that you see who loves themselves, and the person that you see that isn't comparing themselves and isn't beating themselves up inside because of some measure of societal's, example of what success is or what beauty is. It's really, really a profound and beautiful thing. And I love that.
And we can work on it. So there's a
Yeah.
self-compassion piece, and there's also the mindfulness piece, which are self-compassion and mindfulness are like two wings of a bird. And what mindfulness actually does is it turns off this default mode network that actually runs down the middle of our brain. It separates the brain hemispheres. The default mode network is constantly scanning the environment for that self-definition. Am I okay? Where do I fit in? Am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? And so when we're mindful, it actually switches off. So when we are in the present moment, we're experiencing what we're experiencing, why we're experiencing it, that shuts off. So that's a fabulous thing to practice, to be more authentic, to be more content with who you are. Another thing that I recommend people do is spend time out in nature. The broccoli doesn't want to be the apple. The pine tree doesn't want to be the maple tree. When you're out in nature, you realize I'm part of nature. I'm part of all that is, and I'm perfectly fine exactly as I am. And there's also that piece of mindfulness too, where you're observing yourself, getting back to that sense of aging. My, inner observer is ageless. The same, Ellen that's been with me since, I can remember is still with me, observing who am I, what's going on in my life. So really getting more of, that soul perspective, that I'm a soul having a human experience. And again, your soul is ageless. So starting to see yourself in a different way, practicing compassion, practicing mindfulness, noticing too, when you've got your competition hackles up, I have it. I'm checking my book. Is it sold? Are people reviewing it? And when I notice that, and I notice the tension it's creating in me, I soften and I let that go. And I realize that my real purpose and desire is to help as many people as possible, to help people who are struggling with midlife. And it's a tough time. The research shows that our happiness predictably dips across 132 countries at around age 47. Mm-hmm. Because it's a combination of a sense of, everything I wanted to do for myself, this vision that I had for myself at maybe in my 20s, maybe I'm not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's definitely a dip, and we have to do some soul searching, and really ask, who am I really? And what do I want for my second adulthood?
Yeah. I hear you when you say like you're checking your book sales and stuff, because we all do that kind of thing. And I know that it's ingrained in us. I try to, in my work, take it even further than that and say, well, I do want to reach as many people as possible, but even still, that's out of my control. There's so much I can do, but how can I align my trust and my faith and my connection in my work and my purpose with other people, and truly know that my work, if it matters to one person, that I've done my job, just one person. I try to, remove any of that idea of what that success means. Or I love speaking to big groups, the more the merrier. When I have hundreds of people, I feel like I'm just on fire, and I love it. It drives a passion of mine. And even in that kind of circumstance, how can I bring that passion to 4 people? If I'm talking to 4 people, what's the difference? There's no difference. I'm making it different because it's somehow, again, validating a part of me, or I feel like I'm achieving my dreams or goals. So it's really interesting when we keep kind of distilling it down into our purpose, our worth, that beingness, and what we're offering instead of what we're getting. It kind of resonates like that for me a lot of times.
And I love what you said about connection, because really it all is about love and connection. When you have that sense of connection with an audience or with a client, with one or many people, it feeds you inside. You feel it. You
Yeah.
feel, because we're energetic beings and we feel that beingness. And then it's and for me, that's such a different feeling when I have one person that says, I read the book, it really changed my life. Or I'm sure when you have a talk and someone says, wow, I really needed to hear that today.
Mhm.
It's that sense of love and connection that we really thrive with, as opposed to the sense of the ego of like, yeah, my boss said I did a good job, or I sold, 12 books today. It's very different when you make that personal connection with someone and really change someone's life.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Well, I want to talk more about your book in just a minute, but let's just get real for a minute as to middle-aged women. How old are you? 56?
59. I just turned 59. So
Oh,
just
nice.
had my second Saturn return. So
Nice. Happy birthday.
thank you.
So what has been some of the challenging aspects of growing older for you? Because
Wow.
I think it's easy for, especially two people who work in the healing arts and write books and, talk about it. It's easy to tell everybody what to do and what we should do and come from that perspective. But I really want us to talk about for a moment, the parts that are hard, that suck, that we don't like.
Yeah, I think empty nest has been hard for me.
Hmm.
I have to say my kids are 20 and 24. So that is a transition of missing them. And that, we talked about that connection, the sense of disconnection with parents on the one hand and kids on the other hand, and growing where you're not seeing them, especially in the times that we're living in. That's been really challenging. Divorce was really challenging. Just realizing I had been in a 25-year marriage and realizing I was getting older and this was not a trajectory. We were not on the same path and I needed to get off. And that was really hellish. Had some health crises. My retina detached 3 times and I went blind in my good eye. So I have my left eye is not very good and I had cataract surgery. So health issues I've had. I mean, I do everything that I can to support my body. I mean, I practice yoga and I eat right and I move my body every day, get lots of exercise, sleep, stress, but the body ages. And so I think the acceptance of that, of the aches and the pains and the blindness and that I don't have as much energy as I'm super high energy, but I don't have the energy I had when I was 25. Yeah. I can't run a 540 mile anymore. I was, an athlete in college and high school. So I think the acceptance of my body, I don't know if I word my body changing.
Yeah.
Has been hard, but I mean, overall, I'm just digging where I'm at right now. I don't think I've ever been this happy. Honestly, in terms of how I look, I've never felt this beautiful. I had terrible negative body image. I was a personal fitness trainer in my 40s, and I was addicted to exercise, working out 4 to 6 hours a day, never feeling good enough. But the self-compassion piece and the mindfulness piece has really flattened out a lot of the negative self-talk and the way I treat myself. So overall, a lot more positive than the negatives. But I'd say, seeing loved ones pass, seeing kids grow up and just the body just not being able to do quite what it used to be able to do are some of the challenges that I've faced.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I can totally relate to some of what you're saying, in particular the energy part. I really miss just being able to move a heavy piece of furniture by myself or, trust something like that. Because I used to feel so strong and capable. And then you do it wrong one time and you realize, oh, can't do that anymore. Or you need to be really cautious. Also, the hormones for me have been really starting to become very difficult, and just seeing my body take a new shape in a way. There's certain things that are kind of the same, but the other things that aren't, I find it almost fascinating though, to watch and be in this vessel and watch it morph and change and heal itself and grow and tighten and then find space. And, I find it really fascinating. But I have a practice every morning. I wake up and I see myself. I have one of those huge mirrors. It was in my bedroom when I bought the house. So it's one of those huge like wall mirrors. So I can see my full body naked. And it's, it's part of my practice now, actually, because sometimes it's startling. I go, oh my God, or you see it at a certain angle and it just doesn't even look like my body. And so I take a few moments to stand there and turn around and look at it. And can I accept this? Can I love this? And what do I love and accept about it? And like that compassion piece you're talking about, just honoring how much the body has done for me for almost 50 years now, through thick and thin, and how grateful I am for my eyes, for my legs, for my hands. So, but I don't want to dismiss the fact that, and just say, because I love aging. I think it's great. And I don't even really know where that comes from, but I love it. So I want to, see that positive part, but there are challenges to it, no doubt, for sure.
Yeah, I can't climb Camel's Hump anymore. I mean, my knees
Right.
just can't do it.
Right.
I can't run anymore.
Yeah.
So I
It
miss those
sucks.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does suck. I mean, my man and his son went up Camel's Hump, and I'm like, can't do it, just because I mean, I could do it, but what would happen, it would just be really, so you have to be, I think, what you're saying, you start to appreciate form over function.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think one thing that's positive about some of social media is that people are able to have their own platform, and we're seeing people of all ages, versus when you look in like a glossy magazine or on television, that we're able to see people, and people are showing their true self. I mean, I love those pictures of people who are letting it all hang out and saying, this is what it looks like. And so you don't feel so alone. You realize this is normal. Like, I think we're normalizing menopause, we're normalizing it. It's not something we're trying to brush under the rug and saying, oh my God, that's not going to happen to me, or I don't like this, but I appreciate what my body can do right now.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel the same way. I've talked to several clients, and I've had an eating disorder in my history, and a lot of us have body image issues. And it's interesting when we start to see those advertisements in particular, or these videos, with women in particular, but men too, sometimes women who don't look like they look in the glossy magazines. And there's a joy and a connectivity that can happen for sure. But I think all of us have to break through that programming of what's going on here, or maybe a discomfort that arises because we've not been taught to view that as beautiful. And it's, some people find it offensive, which is obviously not accurate, but there's a real struggle for some people to accept this other, the reality, to accept the authenticity and the various types of body forms, body shapes, body sizes, and age, for sure.
Even there's been a nice movement too with people going gray, and people going gray in their 30s, and just saying, people will come out on social media and say, well, you look 65, so don't do that. And people saying, this is who I am. This is the way I want to look. And it's helping all of us. So I think it's a nice contrast to what we talked about earlier, the competition, when everybody shines, we give each other an opportunity to shine. We can be these mirrors and these lights where everybody can be themselves, and we can all feel good about where we are. A lot more people are talking about menopause as well, which is great. My therapist said the greatest thing she ever said to me is, you get through the other side, and it's like you're standing on the beach and the tide's gone out and you see everything clearly, and I'm over it. So I've been through it, and there's a creativity that happens. I think that there's sort of this trade-off of, you're not, able to procreate and create a life in your womb anymore, but you are able to create so many things out in the world. So I think that aging can really open up some gateways to creativity if we can get over some of our old blocks and do the things we love to do as kids and rediscover that aspect. I just got a ukulele, and I'm just loving playing it.
Yeah, it's fun to explore. It's like a new time to discover different parts of yourself. I do want to talk about men for a minute, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I think men, they don't get as much attention in this way as far as the ageism, and we've kind of, heralded or lifted up men in their later years as sexy, and the silver fox, and there's all this kind of talk, about men and how they age. And I've always thought, why is it that we find lines and wrinkles and a weathered look on a man more attractive than lines, wrinkles, and a weathered look on a woman? And of course, we have, the masculine and the feminine, and the hardness and the softness, and all of these elements that are contributed to that. But how easy it is for us to accept that in men. But men struggle with their own sense of self-image, their hairline, their waistline, their skin, their their worth as they, get older, and their attractiveness. It's I think a quieter struggle than what us women have experienced. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think men are discussing it as much. So it's great that we're airing this, that men, are struggling with those issues too. And their self-worth also tied up with their work and their sense of success. And, in the workforce, a lot of people are, we've got the great resignation where people are resigning and finding that, this isn't doing it for me anymore, and really having to question their value and worth. So I think men are struggling more silently than I think women. We're more open to talking about how we are feeling. But I think our culture in general, like you said, they accept, you can see, I'm just thinking about some of the celebrities who are, have gray hair and are aging versus the women, that it's not acceptable. So I think, but men need to be able to talk about it more and know that it's okay to age as well.
Yeah.
And find ways that to feel valuable and to feel, vibrant as they age.
Right. Yeah. I think that silence, their silence is being misinterpreted as there's no issue. But I think that there is a big issue across the board with, men or people. They have the same issues that we have. They just process them differently, and their experience is different. But, I know a lot of men who really struggle with their sense of identity and their sense of attractiveness and the worth, and whether that's because they've gone bald, or they're overweight, or they're impotent, or they're not making as much money as they feel like they should be making to take care of their family. There's a lot of pressure on men, and even especially what we do in society. We look at those gray-haired sexy men and we call them that, and what about the man who's not gray-haired and sexy? What about the man who's struggling that can't grow a beard, and is losing his armpit hair and feels emasculated? You know what I mean? So women feed into that as well, and I don't think we're aware of it enough in our culture.
Yeah, especially the sexual impotence is a huge issue for men. I mean,
Yes.
It's something like, we go through menopause, but men are going through some changes too. And particularly, again, if they haven't always taken such good care of their bodies, the penis is kind of like a canary in a coal mine. So if you're having sexual dysfunction, it can really indicate that you're having cholesterol buildup in other aspects of your body. So it's something that we're not talking about. And I think men, have been told that they have to act and be a certain way. What I've found, at midlife, being in a new relationship, is that the things that I used to be attracted to, that I cared about. So if men who are listening, you're thinking, oh my God, I have to have a 6-pack and huge biceps, and looks and sexuality weren't as important to me this time around at all. I was leaning much more into core values and kindness and, shared things that we liked. Whereas in my, 20s, when I initially looking, it was all about like that sexual attraction and how you looked. And so I think that's one of the blessings of aging, is that our looks really aren't as important to us. And there's so much more depth and other things that matter.
Yeah. And while we're talking about that, I was recently having this conversation. I'd like to have it briefly now. For people who have always been attractive, who've always been classified as attractive, it can be a very difficult and eye-opening experience to come to a time in your life when you're walking down the street and not everybody is looking at you, where everybody's not calling you, where everyone, just kind of walks past you without that special extra glance or so forth. That is a very difficult time period, for both, I would assume, men and women, and one that we don't talk about enough, because there's so much, that goes into, I don't know, just that idea that beautiful people have it made, beautiful people get what they want and they don't ever suffer. And the truth is, everybody suffers. Everybody has, self-worth issues. Everyone has self-image or body image issues at times in their lives, and compares themselves to other people and doubts themselves and all kinds of things. And when this kind of change happens for a person, it is a very dramatic experience for a lot of people. And I think it keeps some people holding on and trying to do whatever they can to keep the attention that they've always gotten on them,
Yeah, and also people having a lot of procedures, and they're hoping that
Yes.
if I have plastic, and I'm not at all knocking that, if it makes you feel good and you want to do it, it's fine. But looking to do those things to feel good on the inside,
Mhm.
and I found in my work with clients, when people work on the inside, then the outside starts to shine. Like some of the most beautiful people I know have some, facial disfiguration. But it's difficult because, we're taught that the most important thing about us is our looks.
Yes.
And actually, body image hasn't been studied that much at midlife, which is interesting. It's mostly studied in young women because they're
Body
available
what?
for body image
Oh.
has not been studied, but the research really shows that it doesn't go away. So,
Mm.
and I think that they're the extra things of hair thinning and, losing muscle mass, gaining weight, all of those things, which can make it more difficult. But I think if there is a solution, is really working on yourself, and also just being kind to yourself and kind to others. And that connection and that beauty comes out when we connect with each other and we look past what we've been taught is supposed to be okay or
Yeah.
acceptable or beautiful. And really everybody has beauty to them if you really
Everyone,
look
I
in somebody's
know.
eyes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like you can have one perspective and go, well, there's not very many attractive people. And as far as that definition of attractive, there was a period in my life I didn't feel attracted to many people, but I can see beauty. Like when I look at different people online or just out in the world, everyone's so unique and everyone's so beautiful. It's really amazing. And then as soon as they open their mouth or you make eye contact and you see part of their spirit and their character, of course, we know that makes a person even more attractive or unattractive, depending on what comes forward. But there's been plenty of times that, and I'm sure all the listeners have had this experience, where you may not find someone initially attractive, but the second you see their personality or see their smile or their kindness or different attributes about them, they become super attractive, and you just want to be around them. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and we're all mirroring it. So even as we're talking now, the energy, even though it's a screen, there is the mirror neurons where we are radiating each other's presence. Is about being present, and then also just doing that for yourself, looking yourself in the mirror and just saying, hey, I love you. You're beautiful. In maybe even just looking at specific aspects of yourself that you love, writing down your strengths, falling in love with yourself. I think as you were saying, the most beautiful people are the people who don't have that ego, that's so much of a sense of self, that they're just radiating presence and compassion and love and just want to, be a light in the world.
Yeah. Well, in your book, Rock Your Midlife, early on, you talk about the fact that people used to not age beyond, was it 40s?
50. Well, we died at 55. So
Died at 55. I remember I had an experience. I've been through a lot of old cemeteries, but this one particular cemetery I went to, there was not a tombstone of a person over 40, over 38 or 40. And it was so like, it just blew me away. I felt like, oh my gosh, I've already outlived by 20 years what most people back in that time experienced. And so and now we're into the, 50 is the new 40 and 60 is the new 50. We keep trying to, as we evolve and elongate our lives and so forth, which is a beautiful thing in many regards. We keep trying to make it something else instead of what it just is. Like, it's amazing that we can live now healthily into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and sometimes 90s, and sometimes our hundreds. It's amazing.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because we haven't had this second adulthood until really this time period where, I'm almost 60, but I'm looking to make it to 100. So I'm looking at having 4 decades of my life left. And that's a huge swath of time. And I think people, if they use these steps in the book, they really can get to know themselves, love themselves, feel empowered, feel enlightened, and really make the most of it and take all of the mistakes that you made your first half of life and learn from them and move on.
Yeah. Well, my goal is to become an elder. I want to become that, embody that kind of beingness, whatever age I get to. I don't know that much about history because I can never remember it for some reason. You probably know a lot more, but there was a time where people really respected, the elders, and I'm not, I don't want to become an elder to just get respect, but just to embody that sense of privilege that whatever knowledge and experience that I've gained, that I share it and pay it back and help shepherd the people, into their later lives. But it's, as I said earlier, this topic of aging gracefully has been a conversation for so long. And in some periods of our history, I think it was more revered. In some cultures, it's more revered. But why do you think it's so hard? Why do we still have these conversations? Why are there still so many books and resources and retreats about aging and ageism? What's going on?
Well, I think the main thing in our culture is the media. And again, the media exists to make money. And so the media wants people to feel bad about themselves so that they buy products and services. I mean, you think about how many billions of dollars are spent on weight loss products and plastic surgery and cosmetics and procedures and all of those things. If we revered aging, that whole industry would disappear.
Yeah. It's so disgusting. Oh God, it's just disgusting. It really is.
But we can fight back,
Yeah.
and I think, but we can fight back and say, I feel good about the way I am, and I'm not going to I'm going to shine my light and be myself. And I'm not afraid to hide my age. I mean, I'm proud I'm almost 60. I mean, I'm happy to say that. And I have a lot of people that I know, who are in the same boat. And also in terms I wanted to bring up too, if you are experiencing, physiological changes, there's a heck of a lot you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important. Strength training is super important. We lose muscle mass as we age after the age of 30. So it's really important to make sure that you're bringing in strength training into your workout routine, and also that you're getting enough protein. So women actually need more protein after 50, almost twice as much as before 50, in order to stop the muscle mass. So there's a lot that we can be doing so that we, and I know a lot of people who started running, weightlifting,
Right.
doing marathons after 50. So it doesn't need to be the end of the road. There's so much that we can do to be vital and to change that, that storyline of, we're not valuable when we're older.
Right. Yeah. I want to just correct myself when I said it was disgusting how the media and kind of, programs us and controls us and everyone buys into it. And, a lot of people, just like the circle of life, people are making their living selling products and creating new items. And, and I get that. And I respect that. And everyone's trying to survive and so forth. But I think just overall, the perception of why are we doing this? What am I trying to fix here that I'm not comfortable with, that I can't accept about myself? And as you said, how can I show more compassion and kindness to myself and to other people, encouraging them and encouraging our own self to be authentic and free and loved for who we are, however many lines and wrinkles and roles that we have. It's okay. We're human, and we deserve the love that we're part of and connected to.
Yeah, nobody needs to be perfect. And I think that, we strive for the perfectionism, but it makes us crazy. It's like, I don't know if you've seen those wabi-sabi pots that they have in Japan, where the pots that are cracked are actually more valuable than the pots that are whole, and they actually fill them in with gold. And I think aging, can be like that. Yeah, we have plenty of cracks, we have wrinkles, we have sags, but all of those things are, scars. They're totems along the way that show a life well lived.
Yeah, I so agree. Well, there's a lot more we could talk about, but I know we have obligations today and we don't want to keep the listeners too long, but I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your work. I appreciate you being a voice and an example for, the people that are around you and following you. And I hope that this conversation is helpful to other people who are struggling. And I never want to recommend that people don't acknowledge the struggles that they have, because they're real and they need attention, but we need to look at the stories and the false beliefs and the ideas that we've created to be the most important thing in our lives. And are those really our truths? Are those our values? Are those coming from an authentic place of our own self-worth? So I really appreciate your time, Ellen.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.